Welcome to Deeply Disturbing Things.
The podcast.
I'm Macy,
And I'm Naomi.
and we are two anxious counselors who like to talk about deeply disturbing things.
Let's get into it. All right. I hope you enjoy this topic.
I'm excited for this topic.
This was a listener requested topic. If you are our Patreon, you can suggest topics to us and we will consider them.
And if you're not and you suggest topics to us, we will intentionally ignore them, but we do care about your feedback.
Yes. Thank you for helping us learn and grow. Uh, so this is something I knew about kind of peripherally, but I'd never, done a deep dive. So I found it very interesting. And I hope you will too, Macy and listeners.
I'm ready. I'm a sponge today. It might be because I am dehydrated from Pride, but
Suck it all in. I just drank a big thing of orange juice actually just before I logged on.
okay.
So I'm going to share about Paul Alexander, the man in the iron lung.
Hey.
You've heard of that, right? Like peripherally, like we kind of know about this, but I'm gonna give you
Did
the
I not
deets.
talk about the iron lung at some point? I feel like that
Did you
came
already
up.
do a topic on this? I do
I
not
feel like
recall.
I did because I talked about
Did,
the
did you
old
maybe
man.
just mention it?
No, because I talked about the man in it.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh, I do not
he just
remember that.
recently or fairly recently passed away.
Well, we're doing it again. Chime in.
Well, let me go. I'm gonna go as you start, verify on our website, right?
Oh, I haven't not updated the website in a hot minute, so it's probably not on there.
Okay.
You can look on the Spotify though. That's
Way.
all up to date, or the Podbean.
Either way. I'm wondering if it might have been a check-in.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. Because honestly, I felt like this, I was learning all this anew, and I can't believe
Talk
I
about
would have spaced
polio.
out for an entire topic.
I did talk about polio.
I'm talking about polio too. Did you just touch on it peripherally, like as part of another topic?
No, because I know that later I did do just a quick check-in about him passing away.
Oh my gosh, I was absent that day.
I mean, you
Dog ate
were,
my homework. I missed the
but
bus.
but I could be totally wrong too. So I'm gonna go look while you're starting.
Well, you'll have this. This could be our very first duplicate topic.
And it's fine.
Revolutionary moment in Deeply Disturbing Things podcast.
Yeah, this has never happened before.
Never. It's that we recall. Apparently, we have really shitty memories, and
No, it's so
we may
true.
have done
That was
each
the
topic
topic
10
last week.
times.
The topic last week that I did was about memory. So there
Oh
you
my
go.
gosh. As long as I leave the house with pants on, everything's okay.
Well, if you don't, I'll just handcuff you to bed.
All right. Well, you can chime in though, because you're
I
an
will. I
expert as well.
mean, I don't remember anything clearly, so
So, as you mentioned, yes, Paul Alexander just passed away in March of this year, 2024, and it's June now, so about 3 months ago. And he had the Guinness Book of World Records for the person who had lived the longest in an iron lung. He spent like 71 years inside an iron lung. So he got polio when he was 6 years old, and it left him paralyzed from the neck down. So what happens is your lung muscles become paralyzed so that you can't breathe independently. And so at the time, the treatment for that was the iron lung, which was life-saving at that time, even though I think we look at it, it looks like this huge mechanical beast, like kind of like almost unbelievable that somebody would live their life in something like that. But back at the time, it was pretty like innovative. So even though he spent his most of the rest of his life after age 6 in the iron lung, he got a law degree. He actually was a practicing lawyer. And in 2020, he published his memoir, which is called 3 Minutes for a Dog, My Life in an Iron Lung. And here's a picture of young Paul Alexander. So he was able to, strengthen his lungs when he was younger to be able to spend short periods of time outside the iron lung. But as he got older, he wasn't not able to do that anymore. I imagine it takes quite a bit of effort to be able to do that. So there, that's,
Just so you know,
yeah.
I did check and just for our own reference, episode 52, Redneck Bidet, polio and Ouija boards.
That
Yeah.
was, I think, right when COVID hit that we did
Yeah.
that because that's why we
Yeah.
were talking about because of the toilet paper shortage.
And I feel better because that was a while ago.
Well, I feel better because that was a while ago.
I was thinking that, well, it was my topic. You did Ouija board, so I
I did
mean,
Ouija board. So episode 52, I mean, that was probably like 4 years ago.
2 episodes before that we did the Dilatov Pass one, and that was the in-person one. Remember that episode 50? So this was a
Oh,
while ago, and then right before that was Balloon Boy.
oh my gosh, that was one of my favorites.
After that was brainwashing. So yeah, and then
Well, I know Redneck Bidet was right when lockdown first happened and we were having the toilet paper shortage. So that was probably like 2020, early 2020.
yeah, it's pretty. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to some of those episodes during that time because it we definitely talked about things differently and topics were impacted. Yeah,
Well, I know looking back, I was seriously depressed for 2 years and was not even aware of it.
same. And I think I'm like, yeah, it just felt you're stuck,
I was stressed and depressed 2 years.
stressed and depressed,
Yeah.
which
All
still
right.
short to stressed.
Still stressed.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, it's a stressy world out there. That's for show. But I think, even though we talk about stressy
we have
stuff
some
on this
great topics.
podcast, like I love it when we can like bring humor into it and because like truly I 100% believe laughter is the best medicine.
Rumpology. I still have your present. It's I have it's like a face mask, but it's for your butt.
Is it like to make a form?
No, they're literally the shape of butt cheeks and they go on your butt and it's made to
I'm
make your
into
butt
it.
soft. Yeah.
I'll report back. I'd like a smooth derriere. Who
Yeah.
doesn't? Who
Who
wouldn't want
doesn't?
that?
The
Okay,
Billy Whack Monster was episode 36, in case anyone wants to revisit that.
you don't have to. That's one you can skip for sure. Well, I feel better that it was so long ago because, probably we don't have very many people listening that are still listening, that listened then that are listening now.
Really? You think?
I don't know. They don't
Hmm.
really talk to us. So you tell us. Did you listen to Polio the first time around? Who did it better, me or Mason?
Oh
Who
no,
tell us?
we don't need to go that route. We don't need to go that route. I have no idea. I don't remember anything. Not fair. Clearly was
So
in a state of depression.
let's jump into the history of polio.
Let's do it.
So super infectious, highly infectious, and mostly affects little kids, which makes it extra tragic and sad. It attacks the nervous system, and it used to be called, before it was called polio, it was called infantile paralysis. So there's no cure. Um, and if it affects the lung muscles, so paralyzing the lung muscles where you can't breathe, or if it affects the brain, it can be fatal. So it's existed since ancient times. There's even, ancient Egyptian images that people have interpreted as being with children walking with canes that they're interpreting as that was children with polio, even back in those times.
Hmm.
But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, really, this is the period of time when there was a massive epidemic, especially New York was impacted. And so every day, the newspapers would publish the names and addresses of the people that were identified with polio. And so then some officials would go out and nail a placard to their door, and the families were quarantined.
Well, it's
So
very fitting that you're talking about quarantine when that's when we first did this topic.
it's so interesting, right?
Families were quarantined. Yep.
So, I mean, talk about being stigmatized,
Mm-hmm.
having a freaking placard nailed to your door. So that year, 1916, there were over 27,000 cases and more than 6,000 deaths due to polio. And 2,000 that year were in New York City alone. So around this time, every summer, there was a polio epidemic in at least some part of the country, and it just freaked people out. People were living in fear of getting polio. I mean, can you imagine just how widespread it was and how much you would not want to get it because there's no cure and it's very serious and it has lifelong implications. So why did this happen around this time, you might ask?
Why?
Right. So at the
Hey,
end of the 1800s, there was better hygiene and sanitation. So this is when people, stopped pooping so much just out their window and letting it run through the streets. Um, so without that, kind of dirtiness and nastiness everywhere that was a part of daily life, Macy disappeared.
here is a bulldog.
Oh, hi, Bulldog. So babies were growing up in more hygienic, cleaner surroundings. And so they stopped encountering the infection, the polio infection, when they were young, and they still had that maternal immunity. So they didn't develop their own long-term immunity. And so when they encountered the disease later in life, they were vulnerable to it. And then if you got polio like later in childhood or as an adult, it'd be more aggressive, kind of like chicken pox. Like everyone's like, you do not want chicken pox as an adult. Like it's very serious.
It's shingles as an adult, right?
Is it?
Or can it turn into shingles, something like that. I
I
thought,
don't really understand what shingles is, to be honest. It makes me think of riffing.
I mean, it does because of the word.
Is
Let's see.
shingles
I'm like,
adult chicken pox?
that's what I don't know why that would store in my brain like that. If it says shingles, also known as herpes zoster,
Oh,
Zoster, is not adult chickenpox, but
oh.
is caused by the same virus,
Mm.
varicella zoster, that causes chickenpox. Usually, chickenpox occurs first and can be spread through direct contact and respiratory droplets. Shingles is a reactivation of chickenpox that occurs. You're such a bulldog, just intentionally. He's like a cat, but giant. Just knock things over. So, so it reactivates the original virus from chickenpox that remains dormant in your nervous system
Oh,
and travels along it travels to the skin along nerve pathways. Shingles is not spread through coughing or sneezing, but rather inhaling virus particles from a rat.
from a what? Did you say rat? You're cutting out.
I'm not a rat. You're just not hearing me. Rash.
A rash. You inhale particles from a rash?
Yeah.
Like people be scratching it and then it goes into the air like a skin dust cloud and
That's
then you
it.
breathe it in?
Yeah. I now
Makes me
know
not want
shingles.
to leave my house ever.
Nothing in my life has ever made me look that up or ever want to look.
That's the beauty of our podcast. It's all about learning. So when polio would start, first you'd get a headache, and I can imagine like people are living in
I
fear.
have a headache.
Yeah, so you'd get a headache and you'd be like, "Oh my God, please no, God, do not let this be polio. Do not let this
Please don't let this
hit
headache
my
be.
child. Please no." So it was a pretty fast progression. So you'd get your headache, exhaustion, nausea, fever, muscle aches, so kind of like flu, and
Hmm.
then bam, 48 hours later, paralysis.
Yeah, I remember it's like quick onset.
So Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd president of the United States, had polio. He was diagnosed later in life at age 39, and he served 4 terms in office. And he was also the first president that had a, visible physical disability. Um, and even though there was difficulties, living with polio and managing all that that entails, a lot of people believe that his personal struggles with it helped shape him as a man and a president. And I kind of love that. So that's a picture of FDR there. So I have a personal connection to polio. My great uncle Abraham died from polio at age 11. He was the oldest of my great grandmother's 9 children. And so the second oldest was my grandmother. Yes, what?
I remember you telling me this on mine. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to
Okay.
take some like
No,
brain
this is
pills.
great. Yeah, no, this is great because it's like I'm gonna maybe remember this the third time we try to do polio.
Well, okay, in our defense, they do say you have to hear something 7 times before it actually sinks in and you remember it. So
And we do the podcast once and one then done.
that was one. This is two. So we'll talk about this 5 more times and then we'll
I mean,
get
we've been
it.
doing this for what, over 5 years now? We just randomly were like, we don't spend enough time together. 5 years later.
So my grandmother was incredibly close. That was her big brother. She was the second oldest. And then when he died, she became the oldest, having all that responsibility, having 8 siblings younger than you. She was devastated by his death, and my mom is named after him. So Abraham in Hebrew is Avraham, and my mom's name is Avra. So if you survived the disease, if it didn't kill you right away, you had lifelong impacts. A lot of people had leg braces, crutches, wheelchairs. Um, at the time, the approach to paralysis was rest, like rest, right? But then there was Sister Elizabeth Kenny out of Australia who was like, you know what? I think that we have this wrong. And she started treatment, a revolutionary treatment that involved like activity and movement and trying to strengthen and save the muscles that were left. Because often it wasn't
That
all the muscles
rehabilitated.
paralyzed. Yeah, there was still some that were functional.
So like the first view is more of that like it's that illness deficit model of like there's something wrong so it needs to mend versus it need strengthen what you have so you can utilize it.
Yeah. So shout out Sister Elizabeth Kenny, who I'm sure is long past, but maybe you can hear me somewhere.
Maybe.
So in 1920, the iron lung came out. And so this was a machine that would help you breathe. So this was for people whose lung muscles were paralyzed and you couldn't breathe on your own. So some patients with permanent paralysis of the lungs, they had to stay encased up to the necks um, for the rest of their lives, really, unless they were able to work on some strength or some techniques where you could come out of it. So the iron lung kept you alive. And I saw some interviews of people that lived in one and just they were terrified of it breaking or time outside until they built their confidence up because not being able to breathe like that is really the worst feeling. So since this impacted little kids, like they didn't know what was going on. So they had these teaching dolls. Can you see that? It's kind of a creepy picture.
You mean,
Um,
can you zoom in on that more?
was it kind of little? How's
Yeah,
that?
much better and much creepier.
Yeah, so this is like out of a hospital museum that shows old hospital stuff. So they use these teaching dolls in various polio related situations to teach little kids like what was happening to you. I mean, this is kind of sad, don't you think? Like hey, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to be in this container. Your head's going to be sticking out. The rest of your body's in there. And so those portals on the side, that's how like caregivers or medical professionals could go in there and help you, like bathing and different things. So
No,
I do appreciate that they made those efforts to kind of explain to kids. I actually thought that was kind of advanced for back then to
yeah.
think about, from the child mind perspective, how to help them understand and hopefully ease some distress.
Hmm.
Okay, so we needed a vaccine because there's no cure. Polio is very destructive. It's killing or paralyzing 500,000 people every year by the mid 20th century. And so we needed a vaccine. Thank goodness for U.S. physician Jonas Salk. We have a Salk Middle School in Spokane named
Okay.
after Salk. So in the early 50s, he created the first successful vaccine and he tested it on himself and his family, which I thought was noble. Versus now, I think we test on what prisoners and other people that maybe aren't able to give real consent.
Hmm.
And then he went on to test it after that worked out on children in Canada, Finland, and the US. And so 1955, his polio vaccine, which was based on inactivated polio or IPV, that was licensed. And it was so effective that by 1961, only 161 cases remained. So super effective. Let's look at Mr. Salk. Where he at? There he is. There's Mr. Salk holding up his vaccine, looking very lab coatish,
Yeah,
very
I mean,
scientific.
there's no way that's can't that probably took 2 hours to take that photo. I don't know. Like there's no.
You feel like it's staged.
Well, yeah, who looks at a vial like that? Who looks at vials?
Do you find this vile?
I'm yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that was like an injection vaccine. So then Albert Sabin developed another vaccine, which is really popular now. It's a oral polio vaccine, and it was using a live version of the virus. So Salk's was inactivated. Um, Sabin's is live, so it's a virus in the weakened form. And what was nice is they would put like a drop on a sugar cube. So it was really kind of fun for the kids, you know? Who doesn't want to eat a
Oh,
sugar
yeah.
cube?
I mean, right. I mean, I don't, but
Even when you were little, you didn't like eat sugar cubes?
who just has sugar cubes?
Oh my God. I loved sugar cubes when I was little. When my mom would go to the bank, I would love going with her because they had like the free coffee station with the sugar cubes, and I would just beeline and be down in sugar cubes as fast as I could,
That
maybe even
makes so
put
much
some in
sense.
my pockets for
Makes
later.
so much sense.
You've never in your life had
Just
the
eat the sugar.
joy, the
No.
absolute pleasure of putting a hard sugar cube in your mouth and how it just melts on your tongue.
Nope.
Oh, I'm gonna bring you a sugar cube so you can experience it next time I see you.
I associate it with giving horses a sugar cube as a
And was
treat.
that like a medicine thing or
Oh, it's
what
just
was
a
that?
treat.
Oh, just a treat. See,
Yeah.
it's just a treat for you too.
Okay. I mean, I get it. It's sugar.
Yeah.
I like the what are the like honey sticks, um, fairy bread, fairy toast.
Is that with sugar? and butter.
Cinnamon sugar, butter.
Yeah, I used
Trying to
to
think of
make
what else.
sugar honey
Oh,
bread
my dad
things.
used to do like peanut butter with sugar on sprinkled on top.
Okay, well, I don't see this as being drastically different than me eating a sugar cube. I feel like you're awfully judgy.
I'm not saying
Um,
I'm just I'm actually listing things also with sugar that I've had. I've never had a sugar cube. I just by itself. I
do they
feel like
even make sugar cubes anymore? They might
I
not.
don't know. I don't know. I'm sure
I'm gonna
they
look
do.
into this.
Okay, you should.
I'm gonna report back.
Yeah, I don't have any negative feelings about it at all. I don't think I've ever that was just never offered as a sweet treat.
No, it wasn't. Let me be clear. It was not offered to me as a sweet treat. I would sneak them when my mom was busy at the bank teller.
I see. I see.
This was not a condoned activity. This was
Got it.
little sneaky Naomi time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this new vaccine had some advantages over the old one. It was easier to administer, and also it helped protect the spread between children. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually stopped that chain of transmission. So it was pretty great, right? Pretty great.
Pretty great. I agree. Yeah.
So Paul Alexander, oh here, I'm gonna show you a little kid in the iron lung. I don't think this is Paul Alexander, but this is some other kid. You can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a mirror up there that people in the iron lung could look up. And so you could see like who's coming in the room, who's around you. Because getting bored in this was extremely common.
Yeah, I could imagine because you can't move at all, right? Like at
Yeah,
all.
no, you can move your head, but the rest of you's in this thing because it's breathing for you. So it's like bellows, like when you're like, those things that you make a fire with, like in the old days. It's like,
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Have
So when it would
idea
open,
about it.
yeah. So when it would like um, create negative space in there with the air, like suck all the air out of it, it would make your lungs expand and then it would fill with air again, then your lungs would contract again. So it would just shoo, 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 like kind of mimicking the natural breathing rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did
typically they had like an alarm on them, like, oh, if they stopped working, so people could come in and you'd have to do it by hand until like you could figure out the power issue
right. Yeah.
because you're making someone breathe. Um, yeah, I don't know what the purpose of this picture is. I mean, that boy looks awfully happy. I don't know if they're using this as like to help kids feel better or some kind of marketing device. I don't know, but he looks pretty happy. Hopefully he is happy. I mean, he's able to breathe, so
Yeah.
that,
I mean,
that could be genuine happiness.
maybe.
So Paul Alexander, when he was 6, got polio and was put in the iron lung. And he lived in the hospital for a couple years, and then the doctors are like, we don't really know what to do. So the parents decided to take him and his iron lung home um, to live out his days in peace because everyone's like, well, he's probably going to die. But he didn't. He started to become stronger, and once he was home, like that was a positive thing. He was able to learn how to breathe and talk. So he'd lost that ability. And so he said he'd been holding in his thoughts for 2 years and he was finally able to express himself. And that was like huge for his recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, he even went off to college, like lived in the dorm. I think that's so cool. And made friends there that would help him. They'd help him out. He was able to train himself to like gulp air. So he couldn't breathe with and I
Uh,
tried this, don't try this. I tried this and I actually gave
he's already
myself
waiting.
a painful like air bubble in my gut trying it. So don't try it. But I did trying to like swallow air so that he trained himself to breathe that way by consciously like swallowing air. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so he could go out of the iron lung for short periods, and so his family told him if he could last for 3 minutes outside of the lung, he would get a dog. So that's why his book is called 3 Minutes for a Dog. So it was an incentive for him to be brave because he said he was terrified to try it.
I mean, somebody get this kid a dog though. Like,
He got a dog. Yeah.
I know, but like, could he not have a dog before?
Well, I think they're trying to encourage him, give him like
I could just,
a reward. And he worked up to being able to be out of it for an hour. So he's able to go outside, which he loved, being in nature. And like, even though he couldn't maybe participate entirely with playing with the other kids, he was able to be, a part of things more. Um, so he's close to his brother his whole life, and they just said they had a normal brother relationship. Brother would come over and they'd just hang out. Just, Paul's just in the lung. That's the only difference.
well, yeah, I mean, your life can't just stop. I mean, I guess it does, but like, what? You'd have to really do some grief and loss work around like meaning and purpose.
Yeah, I'm always inspired by people that can, figure out how to be happy and live their life, no matter what. I'm always very inspired. So Paul learned how to do all kinds of tasks with his mouth. So they would like prop up a book like on a stand and he could turn the pages with, something with his mouth. He learned how to, use a computer, keyboard. Um, it's very cool. And so before he passed, he was one of the last two people in the entire world still using the old iron lung technology.
Right.
Because there's different technology, but he said he never wanted to switch over. And I kind of see his point because modern ventilators, like you have a breathing tube down your throat
Oh, really?
that like um, uses positive pressure, so it's pushing air in versus the iron lung where it's like making the lungs work. This is different. Like that's negative pressure is positive pressure. So I can kind of see his point. And I wouldn't want a breathing tube down my throat. Like, I don't think you can even talk, right?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of
So,
fear too of like, if he's consistently been on this and it's worked, like just changing it, like what if that made it where it just didn't work anymore?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they say.
Right. Someone said that. Yep.
I don't know who, but somebody. So there's um now only one person living in an iron lung, and that is Martha Lillard. So she went in the year after Paul. So if she continues to live, which hope she does, she's going to break his world Guinness Book of World Record as the person living in an iron lung the longest.
When will that break?
I think next year.
Okay.
So, you know, I thought polio was like something from the old days, not something we have to really worry about anymore. However, 2 years ago, the New York State Health Department, so in 2022, confirmed the first case of polio after 30 years of eradication.
Hmm.
And when they went snooping around in wastewater samples, which I'm surprised by how often they're looking at our poop water
They be looking.
all the time. They have a lot of information that they get from looking at our poop water.
Yeah.
So when they did that, they found um, more signs of the virus, so suggesting more people may have been infected.
Hmm.
So you might be wondering, how the heck would I get polio? Well,
Yeah.
the fecal oral route is one of the ways.
I would say that's a very long pause. So fecal oral rat. So poop in the mouth.
Getting the poop in the mouth, yeah. So when an infected person's poop, even tiny amounts of it, gets into another person's mouth, you can you can get polio that way. And this can happen if someone doesn't wash their hands properly before eating or preparing food. It can also be like contaminated objects that get in people's mouths, like utensils or things like that, or for kids, toys. You can also get it by breathing it in, so droplets, which we learned a lot about in COVID. When a
Droplet.
person sneezes or coughs, the droplets.
Hmm.
And so we can breathe that in and get that in our mouth. Or contaminated food or water. So undercooked raw food, or if water or other drinks are contaminated with the stool or poop of an infected person. So you can
Poop.
get it through eating or drinking.
So it's out
So,
there. It's out there as you cough.
so there's, oh my gosh, do you think I have polio? Um, Hopefully not. I'm not gonna wait. I got vaccinated. So there's no cure, but so the best way to prevent it is vaccination. Those that are most at risk are the little kids. So do it if you don't do it for you, do it for the
Mhm.
youths, the little kitties. So
Yeah.
interestingly, that new vaccine that really is effective, because it does use a live version of the polio disease. If people aren't vaccinated enough, it'll actually start to spread that way.
Okay.
So get your polio vaccine.
Well, no,
So yeah,
that's part of like your normal ones that you get as a
uh-huh,
kid. Okay.
yeah. But some people don't get them for different reasons, that they don't believe in it. There might be some reasons, people may have like some health issues, but I don't know. I think that's probably pretty rare.
Right. I mean, and when you're that little, just get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yeah. And this is one that I'm not an anti-vaxxer about because it seems essential. I'm only a half anti-vaxxer, as we've established, so just those
Mhm.
non-essential ones or questionable ones. So here's a picture of Paul and his brother just chilling, hanging out. You know, I thought that was pretty adorable. Just hanging out, just one person's in this giant iron lung contraption. That's all.
Yeah.
So Paul's remembered as being a really wonderful human being. When I was researching for this, I watched lots of interviews that he was in. He just seems really like sweet. Um, he was all about living every day with purpose. That was something he talked about a lot, and he really wanted to make the world a better place. So really just speaking to every day, we have this gift of life and you need to do something important with that, intentional. So it's something I also believe.
It's lovely.
So that is story of Paul Alexander, the man in the iron lung, touching a little bit on um, polio as well. So it's the second time we've done this topic. This is the first duplicate topic that we've done that we're aware
Yep. Ever
of ever.
that we're aware
What if we just keep repeating the same topics and we just don't even know?
of. Every once in a while I get the fear, but this is the first time that when you started, I went, no, we've done this. So that actually makes me feel better that my brain at least knew to
Yes,
pause.
you're on the right track there. All right, until next time.
And until next time, figure out what works best for you, positive or negative pressure.
Oh, wow, that went deep.
I know.
Um, I have two. Can I do two?
You
I'll
can do whatever
say
you
get your polio vaccine and live every day with
yes, I
purpose.
live every day with I like it.
Bye.